So I'll just call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of January 12th to order, and just take a moment to acknowledge that the Northern Rockies Administration Center is located in the heart of the traditional territory of the Dene Cree and Dene Saw people of Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nations. We further recognize the rights provided by our treaty and also celebrate the contributions and enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Are there any additions? Council? CAO?
No.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Seeing none. Looking, well, just a general acceptance of the agenda. Good, okay. And tonight we have a delegation before us. We have Christopher Knoch and Jamie Vann Struth. Struth. Who is it? Is that right? Struth? Okay, sorry. From Deloitte. Okay, so I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Very nice to be back with you again today. Met many of you when we were here in October. We had beautiful fall weather, and we came today. We had beautiful winter weather, so I can only assume it's always like this for Nelson. What we're here today to talk about is an interim document that we provided you a week or two ago. We started the project in the summer. With some initial data gathering, reviewing previous studies, doing some initial research of opportunities and so on. We visited in October, had a number of days of great meetings with different industry groups and other individuals and organizations that support economic development. And following that, we put together this short document that represents what we think we heard and what we thought the best opportunities were to pursue. But I'd like to emphasize it's not a finished product by any means. It's an interim product. So we find this to be a very useful place to stop and ask for your feedback again. So rather than us, doing the whole project and coming back to you at the end and saying this is what we got, we're doing some of the work, showing you potential directions that we can go and trying to get your feedback. So what we're hoping to achieve today is to walk through each of those opportunities in brief. We don't have a lot of time. And just to get your feedback. Do you like what we're saying there? Do you not like it? Do you think we're missing something? Would you, anything missing overall? Is there another opportunity we didn't talk about that you'd like to have included? I will say the final strategy won't just be these top opportunities. We will prioritize. There's limited people, there's limited money, there's limited resources to implement whatever comes out of this. So we do want to prioritize and be somewhat focused. So we will be picking some sort of top things to go after first and put the most emphasis on. But we will be talking about other opportunities and other things as well, such as partnerships and other sort of infrastructure can be developed here that would apply across. So but the focus today is really those top 5 opportunities and getting your input on those. So if we can pull up the presentation, which is just the document itself.
Mayor, do you have access to your document, or?
I'm just getting into it. I'm just getting into it now.
Okay.
Okay. If we could actually just skip to the 3rd slide. I think I've covered the initial preamble. I'm going to get Chris to walk us through each of the opportunities in brief. But before we get to that, any sort of strategy, we want to know where we're trying to get to and what the end goal is. So this is an aspiration, a winning aspiration for the Northern Rockies that we put together, positioning the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality as a strategic northern gateway, building economic resilience that revitalizes industry and the community. So just wanted to get some initial quick feedback. Does that resonate with you? Does that sort of accurately represent what you would like to see coming out of this? Or do you think we've missed the mark in any way?
Councillor Souls?
I think that's a fair statement. I think it encompasses most of what I was envisioning anyways.
Okay. Anybody else have any further comments? Mayor, do you have any comment?
Yes, I do. I also like it. I've thought for a long time that we needed to get away from this idea that we're just a wide spot on the Alaska Highway for tourists traveling through to through to Alaska. So I like the whole idea of this gateway, being more than just a stop on the highway.
Right. And from my point of view, I don't think it's anything that we haven't heard, like at least from my 11 years of doing this job. But what I hope is that we can action some of it, that it to just put some action behind the very nice words.
Yep. Okay. So with that, I'm just like to go on to the next slide, the first opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot of words on the page, but I'm going to turn it over to Chris. We're just going to briefly introduce what we, the reason that we highlighted this opportunity and some of the rationale and what we think you could benefit from this one, and then we'll just ask for your feedback. So go ahead, Chris.
Sure. And so the first one is really a focus on agriculture. And it's not just because of some of the interesting stories we heard about Councillor Sol's family and growing bananas. But we did hear throughout the community an interest in agriculture. And speaking a little bit to what Jamie was talking about before in the winning aspiration, this idea of matching industry and community revitalization. When we talk about economic development, we're talking not just about how do we increase incomes, how do we increase industrial revenue. It's also a focus on how do we make lives better for people in a more difficult to ascertain sense. And I think agriculture is a really good one for talking about that. We definitely heard that there is some knowledge and some acumen in the region. There's some land that's not currently developed that could be developed. There's additional interest, for instance, in some innovative farming techniques. Greenhouses are relatively standard, but there's increasing focus across both northern Alberta and northern BC on, for instance, vertical farming and leveraging some underutilized capital assets, large industrial facilities, buildings that are vacant, these sorts of things. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities that are there. In terms of community revitalization, I mean, one of the opportunities presented by developing agriculture is increased access to local food security. It's a focus on making sure that grocery prices are low in the region, a focus on making sure that produce is generally locally available. And then returning again to the idea of economic opportunity, we really heard interest in supplying north. The community is a little bit, if we're talking about Fort Nelson, but it's true with the broader region. There's difficult transportation linkages south. There are, in some cases, more readily available intermediate producers for instance, the Lower Mainland. So definitely an opportunity to supply to Whitehorse and other northern communities was definitely the focus of the opportunity. And we highlighted a few interesting infrastructure assets that would be useful. So things like having access to cold storage facilities, having access to certified kitchens. We know there's some restrictions when you talk about selling meat and poultry across borders and food inspection requirements there. But slaughterhouses would also be within that category. So we saw agriculture as a good early step in terms of economic development that doesn't require a massive capital investment in the community that could leverage grant funding that's available from different levels of government. And something we heard from stakeholders throughout the community as being of interest. So I'll maybe stop there and just hear if there are any comments around this opportunity.
John? Oh, sorry, Councilor.
Yeah, I think that ties in really well with our vermicomposting initiatives as well. I mean, we're producing this great soil, and it would be nice to see it go to use locally for sure.
Okay. I had a comment, anyways, a question. So we often hear that there could be a market north, but is there any research? Have we done any research, or is there any research out there to confirm whether there is a market north? Or, my concern is that, they have big box stores that are not necessarily going to be buying produce or agricultural goods from here when they have their suppliers throughout Canada and the US. So just wondering if there is any research.
There's two parts to the answer there. The first is that there has been some research that focuses specifically on food supply chains for BC and specifically Northern BC. One of the communities we worked with before Jamie and I was the District of Houston, so a little bit further south. But we leveraged a lot of the research that done. I believe it was the Canadian Agri-Food Institute. I might be slightly misremembering the name of the source. But they had detailed information on what products are most commonly imported or rely on imports. Some of these products are highly reliant on imports from the United States, which of course is a consideration in the current scheme of things. Some of them are more like tropical foods. We're not necessarily expecting the banana farm to balloon too much. But for that project, for instance, there was a lot of opportunity for things like fresh berries, leafy greens. This is also why I bring up the vertical farming innovations that are happening. Some of the companies that are establishing these vertical farms in vacant commercial and industrial spaces are shrinking the grow time for some lettuce crops down to around 21 days or up to a month, significantly shorter than you might otherwise expect. And so there may already be suppliers to, say, Whitehorse or up to Anchorage, these sorts of things. But the question is, if there was a local plant, could they do it cheaper? And the answer is potentially. The second part of the answer to that question, and one of the recommendations that we would put as a follow-up for the team here, is to get in contact with some of the importers in the target markets, notably Whitehorse, just to hear from them. Mm-hmm. If you were to import, what are you commonly looking for? And you can match that a little bit with some of the research that already exists. So the short answer is there is some information for us to go off already, but definitely a few recommendations on top importers that could be contacted as part of the opportunity would definitely be in order.
Okay, great. And then my other comment is, go ahead, Mayor.
Thanks. I just wanted to speak to that particular item. And I think that's one of the action items that we can actually action, out of some of these recommendations, is that some of the research that might need to be done, is anything that's done south of us really is not going to be pertinent to us. But, if there are grants or opportunities out there for us to actually do some of this research work ourselves going north, just to explore what those markets are, I think there's good opportunity there. Thanks.
Okay. And then my other comment was, have you connected with Fort Nelson First Nations and their geothermal project greenhouse connection?
We've made a few attempts to get in contact with Fort Nelson First Nation, and we haven't been successful at getting a dedicated conversation. We did have 2 members of the First Nation attend the luncheon that we hosted with the chamber locally, and they had a few comments, and we did get some indirect information on what was going on, but we certainly continue to try to get in contact with them and have more of a dedicated conversation on some of those opportunities. So it'll be a point of follow-up.
Okay, can we connect them with Cindy Bond? Is that who we've been? Okay.
Yeah, so Cindy was one of the ones that attended one of the workshops in the fall.
Okay.
So we did have a bit of a conversation, but we can definitely continue to.
Okay, because her email would be the only email that with Daytie that is now still relevant, right? So yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Well, seeing no more comments, maybe we can move on to the next page. So something that won't be a big surprise to anyone in the room is that the Northern Rockies obviously has beautiful natural landscapes, and flying in on a small propeller plane earlier today and somewhat fearing for my life, I did get the opportunity to stare at the ground quite a lot and observe the beautiful mountain scenery, the forests. The value proposition for tourism obviously is a focus on the wilderness, on rugged terrain. We did also hear when we were in community on opportunities related to wellness tourism, kind of reconnecting / disconnecting opportunities there. So one of the aspects that we really want to make sure we emphasize, because there is obviously already a lot of work that's happening, and it was a tourism strategy that already exists in this area, is just to make sure that the sector comes out in full, and there are the proper linkages between different aspects in the community, right? Because there is the transportation dimension, which I'll get to a little bit later as well, making sure that there's proper air service and proper capacity to receive chartered flights is one component. But we really wanted to highlight that there's potentially an opportunity to link together some of the tourism opportunities a little bit more cohesively. Make it simple for someone that is interested in coming to Northern BC to experience different tourism experiences along the Alaska highways. They travel through the municipality. When they land in Fort Nelson, for instance, what are things they can do in the community without having to drive, 2 hours away or go up to the hot springs immediately? And how can we follow them through that route and make sure they could potentially buy a single tourism package that leverages numerous operators within the region? So that was definitely something that we wanted to pick out. And in particular, one thing we heard from several tourism operators was a need to focus more on high value tourism. The big spenders, there's an interesting point that came out of some of the operators is that even though the colloquial understanding is that American tourism to Canada has declined in the last few months, better part of a year, some of the higher value American tourists have actually not. In fact, they've increased. The Canadian dollar has some benefits there. It's cheaper for them to come up here. But some of those high value American tourists in particular, they'll come up and spend significant sums of money. And they have, in some cases, the ability to charter their own flights. They're bringing their own equipment. They don't need the same extensive network of operators and supports that might be required to seek a wider tourism catchment. So a big focus on high value tourism, high value international tourists in particular was something that we wanted to match with that interest in the outdoor wilderness experience tourism that certainly we've heard is an asset in the community. Maybe I'll just stop there and hear if there are any comments around the opportunity.
I have a question. Have you connected with Erst at Northern Rockies Lodge in terms of that high value tourism? Because they do a lot of recruiting's the wrong word, but they do a lot of marketing, thanks. Overseas, right? So I don't know if you've connected with him or not.
I believe, Krista, that was who we...
Yeah, so Urs would have been part of, I believe, one of the workshops, but we also had a really detailed conversation with Daniel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so his son.
Yep.
So same company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and definitely some of the comments. I will say that Daniel and his general crew were very knowledgeable about what's going on with the international tourism market in that respect, and were very much valuable as a resource. We also have done, for this project and other projects we've done throughout BC, Jamie and I, pertaining to tourism, have noticed some of the common themes that were brought up by Daniel and others in the region, where some of the targeting needs to happen from a marketing perspective. Especially when we think about, Northern BC, at least according to the data that we have, only attracts about 3% of the total tourism in the whole province, but the tourism profile is significantly different from tourism that you would expect going to the Lower Mainland, going to the island. And so there are some unique strategies that we can play on for the community. But it really is about, how can we link together these strengths? Because I think there are a lot of really good operators and a lot of really good assets in the region. It's just about making sure to the person who's unfamiliar with Northern BC at all, that they know about it, that they're able to envision a coherent trip, and make sure that above all, they choose coming to Fort Nelson and area over Anchorage, over other potential landing spots they might be more familiar with.
Okay, Mayor?
Thank you. I agree with respect to that high value target, I guess, if that's what you want to say. I guess 2 falls ago, I saw Don Jr. Don Jr., we all know who Don Jr. is, in the Fort St. John Airport, coming from Fort Nelson, from one of the outfitters. So I think getting people like Urs and the outfitters together to talk about how they can broaden, that high value interactions between themselves. I think that might be a start for us to get moving. And I really like your thought about, understanding the uniqueness of the tourism in this area as opposed to the rest of the province, because I think that's how we set ourselves apart as that destination, is by really understanding first what it is, that we can offer. The downside to all of this is the cost of setting up some of these operations, right? That getting that capital to build lodges and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's something that I see as being an opportunity, but the downside is the capital investment.
which I think was reflected in our tourism strategy that was completed a couple of years ago. Like it was like in an amazing documents that were created, but you know, there's only so much money to go around. And so that was the stumbling block there, right? Like they had lots of great ideas of what could be done, should be done, but there's always that cost associated with it.
So maybe we need a strategy that looks like marketing to investors in this space rather than marketing to users of tourism, or a combination of both.
Yes, because if I'm remembering correctly, maybe it was in one of the workshops, but it was a definite theme that we don't have a lot of capacity. But I mean, that's a plus and a minus, right? Like we don't want to be Banff. Like that's not what we're after, right? So I think we need to be careful too in what exactly are we attracting, or do we want to attract?
One
Well,
point.
I'd be happy with Kananaskis instead of Banff.
Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
One point I might add, and I'm stealing an idea from my one director here, is when you're limited in terms of capacity when it comes to things like marketing and outreach and really trying to spread brand awareness, a term he likes to use is, influence the influencer. Find people who have a strategic presence in a particular space that you're wanting to market yourself in, and put yourself on their map. And if they like it, and if they see it as an opportunity, they will do the marketing for you. So I think about, people who have a YouTube channel that's very popular and do a lot of wilderness adventure opportunities. Is there an opportunity to conduct direct outreach to them, showcase what's in the region, explain how they could come to the region? And if you can get them in the region, you've gotten a far better marketing outcome probably than any paid promotion that runs over several months. So I would say, one of the ways that this could be implemented is that influence the influencer approach to just who are the top 10 people that you could talk to spread the word about the Northern Rockies, and can that have a rebound effect after the fact?
Yeah, I like that idea. Some years ago, we talked about different contests and everything. Go, hike up to the top of the mountain, and then you could bet, of course, there's no service up there. But anyways, they're fraught with all of the reasons why it wouldn't work. But I think it's a great idea. And I just wanted to add, perhaps we could create our own influencer as well.
Krista.
Right?
There you go.
Okay. All right, thanks. Oh, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Souls.
I think historically let me acknowledge first, we have seen some of the high value tourist connections historically. We've seen them. We know what they look like. And you have some very, very good facilities, such as Earth's facility at Munchel Lake. And those ones are great. But what has happened, I've seen there's a distillery here as well. It belongs to a company somewhere. And that also is a very high value focused thing. What happens is that there's no crossover.
Mhm.
There's no connecting the dots between the high value visitors. I've hosted groups from all over the world on farm tour at my place here by making sure I know when some groups are coming into the community. That is what they are looking for. That's what the travelers are looking for, and they're high value travelers. It's just that that's not what they're being sold. And so I agree that that strategy of trying to find a way to create the more visible package of what is available and get, that's competitive market too, right? So individual groups protect their own interests and they want their visitors to focus on them. But we benefit a much larger degree if we have a spread out clientele. I also just one other thing about we find this same dynamic at work in our farmers market. When I compare notes with farmers market that we have in Fort Nelson versus farmers market anywhere else, when I talk to the Farmers Market Association of the province, which I stay in touch there, and they are amazed at the level of participation by the community in the farmers market. And so there are measurables like what's the average spend per person and so on. And the farmers market here is a higher ratio than anywhere else. So I think, why is that when it's mostly a domestic tool in our community? But there's obviously some reason why that is working.
Perfect. I really appreciate all those comments, and we'll definitely be taking that all into account as we continue our strategy development. Maybe we can move to the next opportunity. Another aspect that really came out from a number of different stakeholders was to focus on the transportation and logistics sector, not just as a supporting industry, but as an industry in its own right. This is linked into so many different things. I mean, obviously, there's the agriculture component that we talked about before. If you can develop the agriculture sector, you'd need transportation companies to support that. But beyond that, we think that there is an opportunity to build on that theme of supplying north and supplying to communities that are a bit more cut off, making sure that there's the proper infrastructure in place to support some larger operators. So, making sure that there's enough warehousing capacity locally in Fort Nelson and throughout the region to make sure that supply can happen. Another component to the transportation sector that was very interesting to hear is when we talked to some of the operators, they mentioned that a significant portion of their business in recent years has actually been in emergency services, so evacuating people in cases of wildfire. And it's sad that that's happening, frankly, but we shouldn't expect it to necessarily become less of have lower incidence over the next couple of years. I think that there'll be demand for emergency services throughout both northern BC, northern Alberta, and the territories over the next several years. So a big part of developing the transportation sector, I think, is also looking at how can Fort Nelson with its airport, how can other parts of the region be positioned to make sure that they can service other regions when they have a sudden need for emergency services, a sudden need for surge capacity to move people out or to move firefighters, for instance, into the region. So that's, again, linking together those two aspects of industry development, but also community welfare, community safety, and ensuring that those things are also paramount. So maybe I'll stop again and just hear if there are any comments on the transportation and logistics sector, any specifications, any major roadblocks that people want to highlight in reference to it.
Mayor, any comments?
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, I like this idea. I see it as the newest idea that you've presented to us. With all the, I mean, we've got a lot of shops around town. They empty shops. They look like shops, but just as easily they could be warehouses. And if you look at logistics in other parts of the country, you see logistics hubs at the end of railroads. Now, that's the barrier, is that our railroad, so everything has to be trucked here and then trucked out. It doesn't make a lot of sense to truck it here, unload it, put it in a warehouse, and then truck it out of here again, because you're not saving much money. But if you're able to move it in here in large volumes in container cars and or large air transport, if that's the case, then now you've got a place potentially to branch out from there. And I am interested in talking to some of the movers, some of the trucking companies who are moving out of here, to see if there's any opportunity there to move freight here by other means than truck, and then truck it from here. The rail is the barrier, obviously, and we've been fighting that. This town's been fighting that for 15 years now, but but I see opportunity there. There goes my phone. Sorry.
Just wouldn't be a meeting without that, Mayor, you know.
I know. Normally I shut it off. I'm sorry. But those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts with respect to this logistics idea. I like it, and with the amount of vacant buildings that look like shops that could be warehouses, there may be a real opportunity here.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Okay,
Perfect. Maybe we'll move to the next page. So obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the rail line, since it just came up as well.
yeah, you got, solve that one and
I don't want to pretend as though it's an easy situation to solve. It's obviously the biggest impediment to industrial development, the development of forestry, the development of manufacturing opportunities. I do know that some of the comments that have happened around forestry recently are interesting. But there are potentially some things that could be done. There's an interesting example that maybe Jamie can speak to a little bit later, where a similar situation happened on Vancouver Island, that there was going to be the loss of rail infrastructure, and several communities bounded together and formed the island, forgetting the name, the Island Corridor Foundation, and helped to ensure stewardship of that and community ownership. Obviously, geographies are different, situations are always different, but one potential consideration is there an opportunity to take greater stake in the state of the rail line without necessarily being in this position of always relying on CN or the province to act in some capacity, and whether there is an opportunity to work together with other nearby communities to support such an initiative. So, Jamie, I don't know if you have anything else to add to talking about stewardship, but it's important to note, recognize that the community doesn't have tens of millions of dollars sitting around to purchase a rail line and upgrade it all on its own. But seeking partnerships, seeking to take greater management role on the rail line may be an opportunity. Maybe I'll throw it open instead and just ask if there are any comments.
I think that's a huge one. Oh, Mayor's got his hand. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, it's very huge. I know what you were where you were starting to go there. If you guys can connect with Scott there, Scott, I think we should probably dig out that rail study that the Coalition of Resource Municipalities did several years ago. This was one of the recommendations in that rail study, was that somebody form a coalition or a group to start looking at controlling the rail and how that all went, and I can't just recall exactly what that looked like, but maybe you can connect these fellows with that report, and it might start us on the way.
Yeah, most certainly will. I guess you.
And then I'm desperately trying to rack my brain because I recently read an article about the rail line coming into Prince George and how there are concerns now that possibly might not continue to be maintained to the same level as it has been with all of the mill shutdowns. Like, is there going to be a different usage? So I'll try to find where I read that and then pass it on. But sorry. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's in tonight's agenda.
Yeah, so we can connect with that. But so that's my concern too, right? Is like we're always we seem to be the canary in the coal mine, right? So it happens here and then it goes down. Yeah, anyways, that's my comment. Go ahead, Councillor Schultz.
I would say that I read the news article just now. I went looking for it before you asked that question.
Oh,
so that was really kind of cool. But the fact that we've got a reduced rail service and a reducing rail service potentially moving forward is all the more reason for the exact type of discussion of finding a network of people, of user groups who will own or operate a short line rail or even a semi long line rail. Just simply because there is that if the numbers don't work and we get it, the numbers, it takes a lot of freight to make a mega system work. But twice in attempts to restart the forest industry around here, there were groups attached that both had proposed and came up with some creative ideas of how to utilize the existing line and make it efficient rather than have, say, a slow moving train with 100 cars behind it, having fast moving trains or faster moving trains. Of course, it takes some upgrades with a few cars behind, and you do a much better cycle time. Anyway, those are there was a bunch of effort put into that, but every one of the groups that we're talking that this is actually one of the best strategies for industry to have some sustainability in the north. Because the CNs of the world are giant. They're just giant companies, and they have to watch their bottom line, and they pick the routes that move lots of freight all the time, and that's normal. I think it's a good idea to look at this as don't know how.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I mean, it's good to recognize that that's the greatest stumbling block to moving forward, right? Like, we all know it, the province knows it, like everybody knows it, but it's just trying to figure out how to solve it.
And I think in this conversation, it's about trying to make sure that the Northern Rockies, while there may be more profitable opportunities for the CNs of the world, the question is whether it can work or can't work. And if it can work, even if it's not CN's most ideal route, making sure that the Northern Rockies isn't left behind and, beginning that more active role in trying to take charge of the future. Related to that, I might just move to the next point. So, strengthening readiness and partnerships, there's two major aspects to this. Excuse me. The first is somewhat related to what I was just talking about, trying to restart conversations with other communities in the north to bound together and increase advocacy. One thing we heard a lot in our most recent visit was just the difficulty of advocating for the region to the province and just being perceived as too small and not the priority. We've seen in other instances that working together with communities that have similar interests can be a way to amplify voice, can be a way to punch a little bit above your weight. And, there's some examples. I know that there have been efforts in the past across Northern BC. One I have listed here, the Northwest BC Resource Benefits Alliance, an example of some advocacy efforts that have been done in Northern BC to this effect. But it doesn't necessarily have to be so geographically specific. I'm hearing of some initiatives happening, for instance, out of Campbell River. They really focus on, linking communities across the country that have similar needs, similar industrial profiles, and making sure that they're advocating in a coherent manner to different levels of government and really explaining, here's the economic impact of industrial development, here's why it makes sense, here's the business case for different industries. So one aspect is trying to increase the efficiency of advocacy efforts. Another aspect is just increasing when we talk about developing smaller economic opportunities, so individual businesses and the ideas of individual entrepreneurs, just streamlining a bit of a pipeline for business supports. I, for instance, used to work at Pacific Economic Development Canada. I was very familiar with the network of providers for funding and business advice, and it's extremely complicated. And I needed a map in front of me to understand what was going on. But there are a lot of supports available. There is a lot of funding available. It's just a bit difficult in some cases to understand who is doing what and what funding is active at different points in time. So I think one of the more immediate action items, for instance, the municipality could seek to work on is having a clearer model of referrals, that if they have a local entrepreneur in the community that needs a certain type of capital and a certain type of industry, it's clear where they can go to get that sort of support, and who the correct contact is, so they're not getting sort of passed around ad hoc. And that can really increase the number of ideas that convert into actual businesses. Just having some more streamlined processes to that effect. So, two ideas, but I think they're related in the sense of partnerships and strengthening readiness. I'll stop there again and just ask for any reactions or thoughts to that effect. And I apologize, I should have silenced my phone.
Any comments, Mayor? I can't, do you have your hand up? No? No, okay. Oh, no, yep.
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is oh, I just don't know what to say about it. This is something we've tried in the north over and over and over, and it's interesting that that the Northwest group that you've got talking about there, I forget exactly what they call themselves, how that developed from work that we've done in the Northeast, and now we're being referred back to essentially something that we started years and years ago to get the fair share and learn from that. And Fort Nelson was able to get its deal with the province. I mean, I will never give up on trying to advocate and work with other communities. We had the coalition, that I think did some pretty good work. Was there specific to Fort Nelson? Maybe not. Maybe we'll be able to use this railway report that came out of it. And if we can, that will help us. But always being able to work with other communities is interesting, but coalitions are extremely difficult to keep together and to fund. Never give up on it. I'm glad your recommendation here is here, because it's one thing we need to do. I mean, we're isolated geographically already. There's no reason for us to be isolated politically as well. And so being able to network with those other communities is important for us.
Great. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah.
And potentially related to this, I take the point of coalitions being difficult to keep together, difficult to stay on message. Whether there's opportunities to have more time-limited, more specific initiatives that unite a few communities. There's a huge emphasis right now on the development of infrastructure, particularly transportation infrastructure, to move different types of Canadian resources, raw or partially processed, out from the interior of the country to the coasts. And obviously the Major Projects Office hasn't necessarily talked about this yet, but is there an opportunity to link together on that specific message of, in this sub area of forestry, there's a real need for 5 communities to work together as part of a supply chain, and can they link together for the purpose of developing a certain piece of infrastructure? And it doesn't go beyond that, and so you're not dealing with the complications that come along with turnover in different councils and what their priorities happen to be over time. Something more specific is pension direction. And I'd be remiss as well, for a number of these different opportunities, also mentioning Indigenous partnership. Of course, there's the conversation that we are still hoping to have with Fort Nelson First Nation, but bounding together with Indigenous communities, local Indigenous communities that frankly are very innovative. I knew about Fort Nelson First Nation years ago because of their geothermal project. It's highlighted as an example of entrepreneurship innovation happening out of the north, and there should be an opportunity for the community to support them, to link in with that, and then make sure that there's some mutual success. So I think that partnership with Indigenous communities is also something that we'll want to highlight. And related to that, I talked about tourism in the last sense as well, but it also comes out in that opportunity as well, making sure that Indigenous tourism opportunities are well highlighted and well represented in any package that's put together on what can be accessed in the region.
Thanks. And in addition to Fort Nelson First Nations, there's Prophet River First Nations too, that I'm sure you'll be connecting.
To connect with Prophet River quite early. So yes, definitely some interesting ideas there as well.
Great.
I think we only have a couple minutes left for our portion of the meeting, so I just wanted to just throw it out for any final comments. Is there anything that you think we missed that you thought you would see here, or you think you'd like to raise the profile, or any final comments on any of those 5 that you think we should focus on more than the others?
No, I think from my perspective, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I was really excited about the agricultural opportunities, I think. And the transportation one.
Like a lot of work to me.
Wow, exactly. And the transportation one too. I thought was exciting, yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, did you have anything?
Those were the three that I thought stood out as well, was the high value tourism, the agriculture, and then the warehousing opportunity, which I see as probably the brightest or the newest idea, I guess, from that warehousing perspective. So yeah, those three is where I would spend some time. I am, have we given up on the big industries? I mean, that's my question about all of this. Have we given up on forestry? Have we really given up on our ability to work with the petroleum industry, with the values that we have here? Is like, I mean, you're a big organization. Do you really see that those resource industries are done?
No, I think the no is
No mention of them here.
the no is obvious in one sense, but the reality looks like a no all the time until there's a greater level of certainty. Until there's a greater level of certainty of investability for long-term returns, then there's going to be decisions are not made to final investment decisions need stability in order to happen. And the research that leads up to them is not even going to happen with the instability that exists at this point. I think that when I say we, I think we, our province and our country, are partway through figuring out how to create that stability. Everybody knows that we need it. It's volatile now. And so I think of that, I think of saying that in terms of going out in the bush, and I can see, in fact, on the farms, I have trees that have been standing there for 120 years, and they're patient. The forest is still here. The oil and gas is still here. The better uses and better management systems for oil and gas are being created every day as we go. So I think that we'd be remiss to actually concede that those things are over.
And I think, when we talk about the infrastructure, we are very much, we're thinking in the time horizon of the strategy when we propose these sorts of things. I would say the end time horizon for the strategy would be the end of the next council term, is where our heads were currently at. And so the question is, what can be achieved? Like, if we fast forward 4 years, is it reasonable that we will have turned the forestry situation around or the energy situation around? Probably not, but we might be able to get some of the intermediate steps going. And so I think that's where the focus on infrastructure really comes in, and providing that stability, versus some of these other opportunities like the agriculture, like improving the tourism connectivity and these sorts of things. They're things that are a bit more tangible as objectives that can be achieved in a 3 to 4 year time horizon, or at least you can see noticeable results to that effect. So no, I would agree. I don't think that the intention is to give up on forestry or to give up on energy, but it is to recognize what the municipality is likely to achieve in that time horizon.
Yeah. Well, thanks for putting that into perspective, because that helps me to understand I guess the bookmarks of in time of your report and your recommendations. So thanks for putting that into context for me.
Great. Any final questions or comments, council? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. I'm glad your plane made it. Thank you, CMA. We don't have to meet tomorrow now, so we very much appreciate that. Yeah, and there's dinner out there if you want to partake. You're welcome to stay to see the rest of the meeting. It's up to you. You're also welcome to leave. We get it. We understand. It's totally up to you. Okay. Thanks, Krista. Okay, moving on to number 6, reports, bylaw, policies. So Committee of the Whole report number 01. 2025 Union of BC Municipalities Annual Convention Update for Information. I think it's Miss MacGyver. First.
I think I'm going to defer to CAO Barry. He's got the best set of notes. Okay.
Sure.
Little bit late getting this to council. We kept getting derailed for this or that since the meetings, but it was important to get something to council. I'll also defer to the mayor and any and the councillors that attended. So Councillor Souls and Councillor Roper. Basically, it's typical. We had lots of meetings, eight minister meetings while we were there, plus staff meetings with various ministries from a staff to staff perspective to have a little more in detail conversations versus the 15-minute discussions we typically go with the ministers. And then there are some agency meetings, BC Hydro we met with and BC Emergency Health Services. Issues and concerns from the region were communicated well by mayor and the attending councillors. As is typical, no major commitments from ministers. And similar with acknowledgements, of course, of the conversations that occurred and the communication that occurred, receptive to the issues, but of course, no groundbreaking things occurred while we were there, which is typical for UBCM. Chief Harold and Chief Ascotti, Fort Nelson First Nation Chief Harold and Prophet River Chief Ascotti attended some meetings with us, which is the first time that we've ever had both First Nations chief attend with us to have some joint meetings in areas that had common themes or common concerns or priorities as a region. So health being one of them as an example, forestry and the seniors discussion that we had around seniors care locally. Some outcomes did occur. It was worthwhile. I mean, we had lots of discussion prior and then at the meetings regarding the Fire Safety Act, which was concerns as a municipality, as an organization when it comes to delivering the new legislation. So there was an acknowledgement from the ministry, from the public safety ministry regarding the challenges that we would have if we were to follow the legislation. And so there was acknowledgement there that they are working in the background to fix that. And also acknowledgement that we are not following legislation. We have advised that we don't have the ability to do so in the areas that we just can't based on the way the legislation is because of us being a region municipality and not being recognized specifically in the legislation. That was some good discussions and face to face. We had that with the minister and with staff also in a separate meeting to discuss that. And there was a level of receptiveness from municipal affairs regarding the delinquent tax issue. Again, no groundbreaking decisions made, but definite agreement and acknowledgement that it was something that was not realized at the time that we became a regional municipality. It was, I mean, through all the work that was done for time and all the legwork, financial legwork, all the analysis that was done, third-party analysis with groups like MMK, it was never acknowledged or thought that we'd run into this particular issue. So there's a commitment from that ministry and that ministry staff to have continued discussions in terms of options and opportunities in terms of what they might be and to mitigate the impacts on us as a municipality, including we lobbed out the province taking on some of the risk from a financial perspective. So that's, again,
Yes, they should.
they didn't, no commitment, but it was lobbed on the table that, you know, as a regional districts don't carry that burden or that risk. And as an organization, it's a significant risk or burden that we're carrying and financially not sustainable if it were to really come to fruition in terms of the level of the amount of infrastructure that's out there currently sitting idle. So there was an acknowledgement there and some really good discussion even from the staff to staff level that we're continuing to have and will continue to have. It's not an easy fix. It's not just a matter of having a discussion and fixing it, but at least the door is open to have those discussions. So that was good. Two commitments from the NRM that came out of the discussions we had. One was the support for the Attorney General's advocacy work related to the federal jail reform. There was some discussion there with regarding that, and an acknowledgement of the issues. And actually, we got a bit of understanding too with some of the challenges with the system and the balance that's there regarding if the tie-ups you can have in the courts if everything went to court versus, because we discussed the abilities for, say, RCMP in Alberta have the ability to charge,
All right, yeah.
which is not,
BC.
they don't have the ability to do so in BC. The flip side of that, which was explained to us too, which is the fact that sometimes that could really tie the courts up,
Mhm.
right? So they take it to a different level in BC to try to manage that. I think generally it's broken, the system, of course, but nonetheless, one of the bigger discussions was on the bail reform piece, and was a commitment from the NRM to support the bail reform process with that group. And then there was communication with a request to meet jointly with Minister Ma, so the infrastructure minister, Minister Osborne, so Minister of Health, and along with our First Nations partners. It was a request that we want to, as a collective group, meet with those ministers together, if need be, in Victoria to discuss healthcare specific around the CT scanner.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
3 months into it. We're still waiting, I'm sure, but.
Yeah.
Mayor, I do see your hand. Did you want to speak after Mr. Barry is done, or did you want to respond to something he said?
Yeah, no, I want to, I just want to supplement what he has to say. So,
Okay,
I'm-
sorry,
okay.
Mr. Barry.
Oh, that's okay. That was kind of the general piece. I wasn't sure. I mean, we got lots of notes, lots of information. Not sure how far our council wants to dig into it. Note being times of the essence, of course, too, but I'll let the mayor speak and we can go from there.
Okay, thanks. Mayor, go ahead.
yeah, thanks a lot. It's a busy week, and I really thank staff for taking the notes that they do, because it's, for me, there's all that information to absorb, and in 15 minutes you're trying to create some kind of a relationship with the minister and or the staff that's there, and then try to get your point across. So for me, with all those meetings, it ends up all muddling together, and it's been September. But I'm going to try to. There was 4 meetings I think that really stood out for me that I thought we had an impact. Although we haven't seen any action, I think that if we follow up and try to go, to meet them when we're ready, I think they'll remember that we were there. The first one was the CT scanner and the Ministry of Infrastructure, and asking for a joint meeting. I think we're just about ready for that with the work that we've done with Northern Health and with our First Nations neighbors. I think we might be able to pull together a bit of an agenda and go ask for that money. And I think they might give us that meeting. I was pretty happy with the way that meeting ended up, although the ministers wasn't there, their senior staff were, and they're the ones who really are making a lot of that happen. Scott already talked about the Attorney General and the bail reform. Really, they were working on that already, and we just really, I think, re-emphasize what everybody else is telling them with respect to bail reform, restorative justice, and dealing with repeat offenders. So some work has come out, and Minister Sharma's letter came, talking about some of the things. So they were already in the approach of doing that. But I thought that was also a successful meeting as far as getting our point across of what we need them to do. Then the seniors advocate, the meeting with the seniors and that seniors Minister of Seniors Affairs, and just forget the exact name of the ministry. I think they will remember us. I think they're interested in some of the work that we're doing, and I'm really hoping that this meeting that the senior advocate talked about, coming to the community on a tour that he plans to do through the north this spring. I'm really hoping that we'll be able to leverage that and hopefully maybe get some of our seniors groups working together on some kind of a plan for continual care. And then I guess the last one, and the one that maybe I'm the most hopeful for, just because, but maybe it's just that hope, and that was the meeting with the Minister of Forest. I think he is really interested in making forestry work in this region, even to the point that, he might be an advocate for us at cabinet with respect to that rail, if we're able to, see something move forward. Between his visit to the community and the extra time that he gave us to talk about, a particular project that's hanging out there. I was gladdened, I guess, by his approach, and so I think that was also an important meeting, where we again reiterated the difficulty and the frustration that we're having, and we got some positive. I thought we got some positive vibes from him and staff. So I would, those are the 4 meetings that really stood out for me, and I would leave it up to the others because they're paying a little bit more attention to what's actually happening in the room than I am, right? I'm focused on trying to get our point across and trying to create some kind of relationship in 15 minutes. And so I'm interested in what the councillors that were there have to say.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I know from the councillor point that I didn't go, I think that this is so valuable because I would like access to all of the information that y'all absorbed, right? So yeah, I really appreciate the notes and hearing from people that were there. So Councillor Souls, did you have anything to add? And then Councillor Roper.
I would certainly add to the meeting on the forestry side with the forest minister, and I'll say without hesitation that I believe that our community forest is operating right now today still because of the fact that we have a partnership with FNFN as a community forest partnership, and that we came together to see them, and that we have developed a relationship with them for it. It's actually amazing to me, and there's no end in sight from what I know of community forests actually working right now, and that's an anomaly in the province. It's not working everywhere like that. So I consider that to be just evidence of the fact that he's putting his efforts into things. He's not just giving lip service, but also helping make things work here right now.
Great, thank you. Councillor Roper?
Yeah, it was a very busy week. I think one day I clocked 22,000 steps just going from place to place. But yeah, I think the ministers we met with were receptive to the messaging. I think we need to work on maybe honing that messaging a little bit better for some of the topics. But generally, I feel like it was our messaging was well received.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything anybody would like to add? Seeing none?
Just
Nope.
one thing there.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a fair bit of hand wringing going on, as in people that are having a hard time figuring out what to do. This is a complicated time of history for every government, and I tell you that in some of those meetings, you talk about the hard things. I think particularly in the safety meeting, what's her name? Yes. She's doing a fabulous job. I think she's doing a fabulous job. She's really sharp and so on. And yet there's so much layer after layer after layer of things that are not working really well. And it's difficult for them. So I had a greater appreciation in a sense for the work that is being done in those offices and the levels of frustration that they have to meet with, and responsibility to work and be, they're held accountable by the public, and yet at the same time, it's everything doesn't always work. We complain as municipalities about the downloading of responsibility that comes from the province, ever increasing download, but the province itself is under the same mandates from the
Electorate.
the country, from the federal, and I think it's really interesting that we need to continue to support the people that are at very least, giving lip service of what ideas need to be moved forward, even if it's hard to do it.
I think if there were easy fixes, they would be fixes, right? And it's all very complicated issues. And I agree, firmly believe that nobody wakes up in the morning and, how can I mess up this resident or that resident, like if you're an elected official, you're there because you love your community or your province or whatever it happens to be. So I always hold true to that. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, move on to, there was no new business. Are there any comments of public news, media, question and answer? No. Okay, seeing none, I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thanks.